Hello and welcome to this Photoshop CC tutorial. Let's load the beast up. Here we are, Photoshop CC. Now when you load it up you should see something very similar to this. This is a clean install. If you're on a PC, if you're on a Mac, you'll see something a little bit different. But let's load up a picture and get started. Magnifying glass here, and I want to fit the screen, so I'm using my screen space more efficiently. What I'm going to do today, I'm going to completely screw this photograph up. Now please bear in mind, I'm a professional, I've been using Photoshop for many years. I can screw up a photograph quickly and efficiently. Now if you're learning, it can take a little bit more effort, but if you stick with me, we'll guide you through it. So pick your photograph to be screwed up, and then let's come to Image, Adjustments. Well, it's looking too dark and too contrasty. Let's try adjusting the brightness and the contrast. Now I can do it this way, but look, Photoshop's given me an auto button. I can use the auto button, do it all for me automatically. Well, that's useful. And of course, because it's Photoshop, it's the industry leader, an auto button must know better than me. Right now, Image, Adjustments. It's looking rather green at the moment, so I want to change the overall color balance. Right, looking too green, so let's take a bit of green out of there. There you go. That's got rid of it. Increase the skin tones. There we go, looking good. Now there's no point in using an expensive program like Photoshop CC if you're not going to use any of the filters they supply. I mean, if you got it, flaunt it, why not? Okay, so here we are, Watercolor Filter. Yeah, okay, well, let's face it, it's the kind of subject matter that deserves a good watercolor treatment, so click on OK with that. What else have we got in the filters? Let's see, render. Oh, here we are, here's a nice one. Lighting effects. I'm going to show you a little trick with this. All right, you can adjust various different things, like the intensity of it, there, and whereabouts it goes, how big it is, and all that kind of thing, the angle. Now that's looking a bit intense, but I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to come to Edit, Fade Lighting Effects. I can knock that back to about 50%, so it's much more subtle. There you go. Now, anything more I can do? Well, I could do with him leaning forward a little bit so he's looking more cuddled up. And also I could do with it a little bit of a cropping, because let's face it, I've got all this empty space here. So let's come to the crop tool and let's crop him. There we go. Nice and tight. Let's get him in the middle. There we are. And hit my enter button. Let's come to Image, Rotation, Arbitrary. Let's try... Well, I want clockwise. I want him forward. Let's try about, say, 10 degrees, something like that. There you go. That's more looking more cuddled up. But I'm getting this white area around here, which I could really do without. So let's come back to our crop tool and just come here and just get rid of all those bits there. I'll take it as close as I can. Oh, no, I'm going to lose a little bit there. So let's try about, say, there, and hit the enter button. And there we go, masterpiece. And then my partner comes along and says, what do you think you've done? You've completely screwed up the photograph. And I turn around, of course, and I say, well, of course I haven't. I'm using Photoshop. I'm using the latest version of Photoshop. Look at this photograph. It is awful. Let's rewind a little bit. Let's try and do something that's a little bit less, well, awful with this photograph. Now come down to history. This is a list of all the terrible things I've done to make this photograph look so crap. All right, open, brightness, contrast. We can just click back on open, take it back to its original state, and we'll start again. All right, let's close up our history box. There are certain things you will do again and again and again with your photographs. Now, there's a certain order in which I recommend you do them. Somebody else might tell you different. I'll tell you this order, and I'll explain why in either this or future videos. First of all, you rotate. Second thing, you crop your image. Third thing, you work out your overall darkness and lightness levels. And the fourth thing, you worry about your color balance, whether it's green or whether it's red and what's happening there. There's many different ways to do these. I'll take you through some. After you've done those 4 steps, that's when you start doing things like using the clone tool or the healing tool, or using burn and dodge tools, filters, whatever. But if you have to do those 4 steps, do them in this order. We'll do that now with this image. Now before we do any of that, we need to set up some kind of a working structure so we can protect our original image and make changes to different ones. Now, come to here where it says background, you can see it's locked here, but if I press Alt or Option on a Mac and double click it, it becomes layer 0. I can edit it, but I'm going to leave it there for now. Instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to click it, I'm going to drag it down to the new layer icon, which makes a copy of it. So now I've got two layers, one sitting on top of the other. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come down to my group icon, or like a folder icon, and double click on it. I'm going to call it Fix. I'm going to take my new layer and call it Base, because I'm going to base all my adjustments upon this, drag it up into my Fix folder. So now I can make my changes to there. The underlying layer isn't affected. Okay, what did we say we're going to do next? Rotate it. Well, you can come to Image, Rotation, Arbitrary, and start punching numbers in here. But here's an easier way of doing it. Come to Edit, Free Transform, or, as is a more efficient way of doing things, you can press either Ctrl+T or Command+T if you're on a Mac, and you get this little border around it. Then you can rotate whichever way you want. Don't worry about punching numbers, although you can see just next to my cursor, I've got a little visual readout. But that should be fine for me. Now, if I come to this little eye icon underneath, I can make it invisible. So now I can see I've got these blank areas around here. Well, I could either clone them out or I can crop them out. Now, I did say we're going to use crop tool, so let's crop them out. Come to my menu bar on the side, come to the crop tool. I'm going to hold down my shift key and bring it down. That keeps the proportions constant. And bring it up to here. So now I've got rid of those bits around the outside. Now, when I was busy messing around, I said put it in the middle. No, don't put stuff in the middle. We'll cover rotating and cropping in a future video, but for now, press the enter button. There it is. Right, now the brightness and the contrast. There's many different ways of controlling your overall color levels. Come to Adjustments. Just for now, I'll use something called Levels. Now this shows me all the various different tones which are in my image. You can see I've got hardly any light tones here. A lot of kind of mid to light grey tones around here. That must be this bed area, and no blacks there. Now rather than clicking on Auto, which I recommend you avoid if you can, do it manually. Just slide these little sliders around here, and I'm getting a more contrasty image. You'll notice also it's getting a little bit more intense as well, some of the colours, which is why I do the overall brightness levels before I start messing around with things like colour balance. So back to Image, Adjustments, come to Colour Balance. Now I did say that there's a green cast here, and there is a green cast. So I'm on the midtones now. I'm going to take some of it out, but I'm going to go subtle with this. I'm also going to take a look at the shadows. I didn't adjust the shadows last time, and I'm going to go for cooler shadows, so blue and yellows, and highlights. I'm going to go for slightly warmer highlights. This is classic colour theory here. Have a little bit of opposite in there. Always spices things up. If you're going to do various things like cloning or stuff like that, wait until you've done all the previous 4 steps. Then do stuff like this sweat stain there. It's not looking very nice. Now I'm just doing a very quick and dirty way of doing this. I'm coming to my Polygon selection tool. Don't use the lasso tool. We'll explain why in a later video. Come around here and just click along the line of his face. Click around to here. Double click to select it. I'm going to come to Select Inverse. So now everything on the inside of there is protected, everything on the outside is going to be affected. I'm going to come to my Clone Stamp tool. I'm going to click on Alt to select an area and then start stamping it down to get rid of this big sweat stain. I managed to take a little bit of the face there. Let's get rid of that. Back to here. That's looking a little bit better. Press Ctrl+D or Command+D to deselect. Now I've done that very, very quickly. There's more efficient ways of doing that. Come to Fit Screen. Now, if you're looking at it, you're thinking, well, he hasn't done very much to this picture. Oh yeah? All right. Well, that's the layer we've been working on. Let's make it invisible and look at our original photograph. Quite a difference. Okay, that one's looking green, washed out, still got the stain there. This one, it's looking a lot fresher. There's no stain there to distract on the forehead. The skin tones are looking better. The overall brightness levels are looking better as well. Somebody looking at this photograph, which, let's face it, is a family photograph, you want this to look natural. You don't want people to see the joints. You don't want people to see all the work you've put into it. You just want them to look at it and say, okay, it's a nice photograph. I like it. Now, if you compare this with a photograph, say, in a glossy women's magazine, well, they've been photoshopped much more and they can get away with that kind of thing because you expect to see glossy, photoshopped images in a magazine like that. But this is a snapshot. You try and make it natural. You try and make your Photoshop work subtle or invisible. But you can enhance. That was just a couple of minutes work and look at the difference. Okay, let's go on to other videos. We'll look at what we did in more detail and we'll look at different ways of doing things. See you there. I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, maybe you consider clicking on one of the links below and check out my game called Disco Baby, which is on the iTunes Store or Android stores like Google Play. It has 3 different games in it, a memory game, a maths game for children, and a dance along with me game for toddlers to join in with. Thanks for your time.